How much more do we have to take?
Second, 2021. This occurred after the defendant chased down Mr. Rosenbaum and confronted him while yielding an AR-14. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the videos. Mr. Rosenbaum sees, and I'll show you the video in my closing argument. You'll see Mr. Rosenbaum take off when he sees my client coming, along with the Zeminskis, to set up the ambush of my client. Provocation? I don't think so. The things that I just pointed out to you, why is that a problem? Because one, he's lying. Two, he's misrepresenting. Or he wasn't prepared when he started this trial, and his closing argument has been a change to try and fit what has come out. Remember how when he was talking, there's no proof that the Rosenbaum and Zeminski knew each other. Maybe they didn't know each other that night, but they were together throughout the night. You see them together in pictures wreaking havoc in this city. And now we have the magic pixel camera that brings forth his provocation. I'm going to go through the charges and we'll talk about each one of them. Then I'll go through the witnesses and hopefully I'll bring it home in an honest and forthright fashion. Count one, reckless homicide. My client shot Joseph Rosenbaum. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, there was nothing reckless about my client's conduct that day in regards to Mr. Rosenbaum. Mr. Rosenbaum was coming at him. My client ran from him, retreated, which is not needed, continues to run.
This is such bullshit.
Plastic bag is thrown, the metallic plastic bag. Kyle doesn't know what it is at that time. It causes him to turn and look over his shoulder, pointing the gun in that direction. Mr. Rosenbaum, is he dissuaded by that? No, he is not. He continues running and advancing on my client. That whole time, the state doesn't say anything about Mr. Zeminski firing the shot. Mr. Zeminski having his gun up. Think of the circumstances as they existed at 11:50 on August 25th of 2020. He runs through that parking lot. He continues running on. He turns as he comes into that box canyon with the cars, the van, and I believe it's a Pepsi machine. And he turns because he has no place else to go. I'll show you the Zanin video later on. What's important about the Zanin video, you see that mob of people destroying the cars at Car Source 3, which Mr. Binger doesn't want my client to go and try to protect, even though he was asked by those individuals to protect that property. Nick Smith called him, hey, they're bashing up the cars and starting fires. Go down there. He goes down there. He has as much right to go there as anybody else in the city of Kenosha.
Really?
And be unmolested by the likes of Joseph Rosenbaum, Kelly, and Joshua Zeminski. And Mr. Binger says, oh, we'll get the Zeminskis later. Well, ladies and gentlemen, last time I checked, this is still the United States of America, and he has the burden of proof. If he wants you guys to believe that my client pointed a gun at him, call the Zeminskis.
Wow.
Put him on the witness stand, ask him questions, and let me or Mr. Sharafasi cross-examine him.
Somebody just gave news that there is a bunch of military vehicles headed for Kenosha.
That's how we do things in a court of law, but not in Mr. Binger's court. He says, I'm blaming the victim. As a defense lawyer, I might get accused of that more than some other people. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rosenbaum was shot because he was chasing my client and going to kill him, take his gun, and carry out the threats he made. And Mr. Binger wants to make a big hullabaloo about the shot in the back. Remember his opening statement? He shot him in the back. And that's why I'm sitting here in front of the jury like this. Did he shoot him here? Did he shoot him there? Because of the way the bullet went in and where the bullet ended up in the hip, you know full well that the individual, and I asked the doctor, is on a horizontal plane. What is that horizontal plane consistent of? Somebody leaping, lunging at my client. And we know how close Mr. Rosenbaum was to my client. The furthest he could have been when it started, the first shot, 4 feet with the sniper. We know that his hand was on the gun. Mr. Binger wants you to believe that that was just happenstance and accident. Come on, people. Physical evidence does not lie. Use your common sense and good judgment. He talks about Mr. Rosenbaum just somehow ending up down at the riots. Remember that? Mr. Rosenbaum, according to the testimony, walked from the bus center 4 miles out to Ms. Swartz's house, and then he couldn't stay there for some reason, and 4 miles all the way back. That's not just ending up. That's going someplace with a purpose, and throughout the night, you saw his purpose. And there was more than one piece of testimony about Mr. Rosenbaum, whether it was a hospital or whether or not it was a jail. Remember that? And there was testimony regarding his medication. Ms. Swartz said we couldn't get medication because the Walgreens were all boarded up. She said, the hospital said, they gave him his medication. So whatever facility gave him his medication. Mr. Binger, the man with the burden of proof, why didn't he bring in a hospital or a jail to prove that Mr. Rosenbaum was properly medicated? He'd been off his medications, according to Ms. Swart, for 7 to 10 days. We know that he was acting like somebody who wasn't on their proper medication. He was not acting normal. Next.
This guy irks me.
Richard McGinnis. Reckless. And here, Mr. McGinnis, I'd like to talk about, because the self-defense does not go to Mr. McGinnis, but if Kyle was privileged in exercising self-defense against Mr. Rosenbaum, it carries over to the endangering count of Mr. McGinnis. And Mr. McGinnis, specifically, if the defendant, and I'm reading directly from an instruction, page 9, second full paragraph, which you will be given, if the defendant was acting lawfully in self-defense, his conduct did not create an unreasonable risk to another. That is Mr. McGinnis. Ladies and gentlemen, when my client shot Joseph Rosenbaum, he feared for his life. He feared because of the prior threats, the prior statements, and the violent acts that had been witnessed by my client. Mr. McGinnis, as a witness, I think he helped us more than he hurt us. He talked about, and this was on cross for Mr. Binger, how do you know what Mr. Rosenbaum was thinking? Because I don't, but I know he yelled, "Fuck you," and then lunged at Kyle Rittenhouse. Why is he yelling the F you? One of two things. One, to intimidate, or two, he got into a situation over his head, thinking, as he said before chasing him, "You won't do shit, MFer," to my client. Well, he was wrong. He states Kyle did not know Richard that he was there, meaning Richard McGinnis. He's a citizen journalist who was running along with his hand in his phone in his hand up in the air in to get a story. My client is not responsible for endangering him when he runs into danger. Plus, the instruction says that if he was privileged as to Rosenbaum, he's privileged as to count 2, Mr. McGinnis. Count 3, jump kick man. The uncomplaining, unidentified witness in count 3. There'll be some video later on when I'm going through some of that. You'll see, and I ask you to pay attention. The state has said he's not kicking him. He doesn't hit him. When you watch the video, and it'll be in slow motion, watch where his foot goes, watch what happens to Kyle's head. The force of him kicking him in the face spins his body 180 degrees around. And then it's on. Huber coming in from behind, hitting him in the neck, escape. Ladies and gentlemen, what you see throughout event number 2, and this is the beginning of it, is individuals working in a mob. They don't know what happened at Car Source 3, event number 1. But somebody said, hey, he shot somebody. Doesn't know that he was being chased by a crazy person. But they're going to get their licks in on Kyle Rittenhouse, or as they perceive him, somebody from the other side who has been putting out their fires, causing problems for them, stopping them from wreaking havoc in Kenosha like they did the night before.
Why does he keep saying havoc like that? It's havoc, not havoc.
And ladies and gentlemen, the standard is likely to cause death or great bodily harm. Great bodily harm is defined as likely to cause serious bodily injury. A kick to the head is likely to cause a serious injury. Did my client suffer a debilitating injury as a result of that? No, but that's not the standard.
Yo,
Mr.
this
Huber.
is such.
He's a rioter, pushing a dumpster lit on fire, going to the barricades to pick up pepper balls, throw them back, pointing his middle finger at the police.
He had an assault rifle and shot
at the gas station.
3 people.
Hits Rittenhouse 2 times with the skateboard and attempts to disarm him. You'll see it all in the slow motion video later on. And Kyle Rittenhouse is running away from Anthony Huber. The state wants to call my client an active shooter. And the reason they want to do that is because of the loaded connotations of
He's a terrorist.
Everyone has heard of the theater killings, the school shootings, and things like that. Ask yourself, the definition of an active shooter is somebody with a plan to inflict multiple casualties, usually out of anger or animus towards a group. This case, what caused Kyle Rittenhouse to shoot somebody? Joseph Rosenbaum. He runs after shooting Joseph Rosenbaum for almost 2 blocks before scene number 2. Mr. Binger makes a big thing about Kyle Rittenhouse not staying around Car Source 3 after the shooting. Ladies and gentlemen, if Kyle Rittenhouse had stayed at Car Source 3, all that would have happened is it would have made the police have an easier job, because scene 1 and scene 2 would have been put in the same location. My client ran 2 blocks without shooting at anyone, pointing at anyone, doing anything to try and get away. He tells the individuals he's going to the police, and he's running in that direction when he's stopped. He's hit in the head with a hand with a rock in it, knocking his hat off. Mr. Binger says, oh, he just knocked his hat off. I don't think that individual was trying to steal Mr. Rittenhouse's hat. He was trying to take his head off. Who comes in next? Anthony Huber for the first time. Hits him. Opening statement, Mr. Binger, was he takes a swing at him. Now it's he blocked because we took the videotape and lightened it up. Huber strikes him in the head and arm the first time. Jump kick man comes in, kicks him in the face, spins his body 180 degrees, and Anthony Huber comes in for the second lick to the shoulder neck area, trying to take his head off. And when he does that, his other hand goes grabbing for the gun, his bare hand onto the gun and pulling it away from Kyle Rittenhouse. Mr. Binger wants Kyle to sit there and hope and pray to God his strap works, and Anthony Huber can't get the gun. We don't know that. We'll never know that as he's running away from him. A shot as the gun is being separated from his body, and you'll see the butt way far away when the shot is finally fired. Even Gage Grosskowitz said he was concerned about the blows that Jump Kick Man and Anthony Huber were inflicting on Kyle's head.
Really?
That's probably the only thing I agree with Mr. Gage Grosskowitz. The state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what Kyle did under those facts and circumstances was unreasonable, that he was not entitled to self-defense. Consider all the events that had occurred that evening. Him being attacked, kicked in the head, hit in the head with a skateboard, other individuals running up on him, and now Mr. Grosskowitz runs up on him. And the first action of Mr. Grosskowitz, and I'll go through the video later, is really he's running in, the hand is coming up, and the gunshot with Huber goes off. And the natural reaction is the flinch. He covers up. And then he pulls his hands up. And as he's standing with his hands up, look, he's not gripping the gun anymore in a pistol grip. Hands apart, hands up. And as he comes in to finish the job, the hand is on the gun going for Mr. Rittenhouse. And he says it's an involuntary movement. The shot comes before it gets directly to his head, but the motion is coming, the shot, and it continues on with that momentum. Enough momentum to go through the bullet and point directly at Kyle's head. Does Kyle fire again? No, he doesn't. Actions likely to cause death or great bodily harm. And he is coming in with a loaded Glock. And we asked Mr. Gage Grosskowitz about it. He wouldn't even admit that there was one in the chamber. That's why we had to put on the officer to talk about the unfired shell casing. Lukowski talked about clearing the weapon and a live round coming out. Because Grosskowitz won't say anything that puts him in a bad light. Grosskowitz, the person who has 10 million reasons to lie. And we all know he did lie. Because he never gave a new interview after giving his statement saying he dropped his gun going down the street. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the charges. Those are a synopsis of the charges. As I stated, the burden is on the state, and they must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client did not have the right to self-defense. Kyle, as he sits here, is presumed innocent of all charges.
That motherfucker's guilty.
If there is any reasonable hypothesis
Guilty.
to reconcile with Kyle's innocence, that is what you are to choose. Remember, when looking at the burden of proof, they have it. Think about some of the things, the shoddy investigation, the rush to judgment from the Kenosha District Attorney's Office, the Zeminskis not being called as witnesses. They have the burden of proof. We don't. They want it to be that Kyle was out there doing something improper. Kyle was a 17-year-old kid out there trying to help this community. He was asked to provide help in protecting property at the car sources. It started and he did it. He did provide aid, and he was
Fuck
asking
you, people.
if anybody needed aid.
People
Whether
over
somebody
property,
chooses to
bitch.
accept that aid, that's on them. But Mr. Binger wants to poo-poo his sincere belief that he's helping people because he borrowed bandages from Dominic Black, and I think he might have borrowed something from Lukowski also. But in the picture, when the Kandiri poses with all the people who are going to protect his property, there's Kyle's big orange gator box. He's got his pack on, filled with things, and he's willing to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle was not an active shooter. That is a buzzword that the state wants to lash onto because it excuses the actions of that mob on the 25th of 2020. Whenever Kyle was there, he reacted to people attacking him. There's numerous times, and you'll see him on the video, he does not shoot. He runs 2 blocks.
He looks real sappy right about now.
To 61st scene 2 without firing his weapon. The individual hits him in the back of the head. He does not turn around to address that threat. Huber takes a swing at him with the skateboard like that. Kyle blocks, and the skateboard's knocked out of his hand. He doesn't turn around and shoot him. He keeps running and falls from the 2 hits. He's run that far, and yet somehow he just fell over on his own. As soon as he's on the ground, they're there attacking him. And you see the people. The law of self-defense, you've seen it, you've heard it. Now I'm going to go through the witnesses. Oh, Dominic Black, first witness, charged by Mr. Binger for providing the gun to my client. 2 counts, looking at up to 6 years in prison. His case has been adjourned so that he can help the state. I don't think he helped the state that much. I think he was a pretty truthful witness, all in all. He told them about Kyle there to help people, that they had permission from the Kandiris, that he saw Kyle help the woman with the foot, help the person with the hand. Mr. Binger wants to just say, oh, that doesn't matter. If it wasn't Kyle, it would have been somebody else. The point is, he was there and he did it. There was no pointing by Kyle of any laser sight. There was no ability for Kyle or him to point laser sights at anyone because their guns didn't have the type of optics that did that. He said Kyle was there to help. The only person helping was Kyle. And he can say what he wants about whether or not he let Kyle take the gun or not take the gun. He never told him not to. He went to the location with him. They bought straps at Jelensky's together. He's trying to cover his butt a little bit. The guns were there and they took them. They took the guns, as he said, to deter people attacking them. He saw Kyle at the end, sweating, was in shock, and said that he shot someone, he had to do it. That is Dominic Black. Corey Washington saw the rioters breaking up concrete at the church parking lot, described Rosenbaum as erratic, stated the crowd was suspicious.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. One of the things that I thought was strange was they were, the night before, they were burning garbage trucks, but they only burnt the old ones. I think that tells you something about his point of view, that there's a certain amount of property damage that is justified and okay. Kenosha was using those garbage trucks that the rioters lit on fire. And nothing regarding property destruction was going to do anything to help Jacob Blake. We also learned that Kyle Rittenhouse smokes cigarettes and that he has an affinity for the dinosaur museum. Detective Howard, ladies and gentlemen, Detective Howard's testimony and Detective Antaramian's testimony
People
is
over
the stuff
property.
of what reasonable doubt is made of. Two detectives, both lead officers on this case. They've sat through every minute of this trial, and their opinions of the actions of Mr. Rosenbaum from testimony, videos, couldn't be more diametrically opposed. Detective Howard, on cross-examination, knew that the guy was hiding in the car and jumped out from behind the car and began chasing Kyle Rittenhouse. Oh boy, that's not good for the state's case. So there's the old chit chat between Mr. Howard and Mr. Antaramian and the prosecutors after, and all of a sudden we've come up with the new theory. And you heard the new theory that he raised the gun, and that's what's on the video. Could I have the firearm, please? He told me he checked. Check it again. Think about when Kyle Rittenhouse is firing the gun and he's seen holding the gun throughout the events the 25th. Shouldering the gun, and I'm not going to bring it all the way up to my shoulder, to the right shoulder. It would be a stance like this. The reason I objected in his closing argument is because that's not the way he was standing. If he's standing like this is right-handed, pointing the gun this way, up at the ready, his back would be to the drone footage. In the drone footage, you see the arm. It would be somebody having to hold the gun left-handed. This is a right-handed firearm. This gun is brought up to his face, and it is pulled back. The shell casing, hot, and the fire that ejects it is going to be going right into Kyle's face. Photograph I'll talk about later. You don't see the straps on his shirt. It didn't happen the way he said. It doesn't happen the way in the photograph. I'm going to need this again. Burden of proof, once again. The telephones, the searching of telephones with search warrants, the subpoenaing of records. I have no problem with that. It's good police work. But when you pick and choose and you make favorites, it's not. My client testified, and I'll say it this way, the detective testified that my client's phone was sent to the FBI. It was unsearchable because of the operating system. The FBI and the federal government had not cracked it yet. We found out about that. We had nothing to hide. Here's the numbers. Search the phone. As long as we're given a simultaneous copy, so we have what you have, we can have our experts look at it. They can have their experts look at it. So we know that there isn't anything added or deleted. We did that. We gave that to the state. If we had something to hide, they never would have gotten in that phone. They took the phone, they made a copy, they searched it. Lo and behold, nothing
All
of
right.
an incriminating nature in it. Nothing.
Honestly, I can't keep
militia,
listening to
white
his
supremacist,
dumbass
any of it.
voice with his accent and all that bullshit. I'm just tired of listening to it. I'm tired of hearing it. Honestly, we already know the bullshit that's going to keep coming out of his mouth and the judge's mouth. We don't need to hear any more of that. Seriously. I do want to give this this quote that I saw online that you could check out on Facebook. I posted it to the Facebook Leon Block. It says, it's a comment from a combat veteran. And he says, just a perspective. If you arrive armed to a place where violence is happening, prepared for violence, and you engage in violence, there is no self-defense. You are, in fact, a willing combatant. And if you do this without being sanctioned by a government outside of a combat zone, you are also, in fact, a terrorist. We had another word for armed civilians operating outside the military as well: insurgent. If your recourse to the terrorist is to look up the criminal history of the victim, it is no different than looking up the criminal past of everyone that died on 9/11 in order to justify the hijackers. This kid was illegal all the way around. This shit is ridiculous. Couldn't have said that any fucking better. So the piece that you just heard from was the defense giving their closing arguments, I guess. I will keep you updated with info as we go along. I did, in fact, get wind that there are 500 National Guard troops stationed and ready to go if anything, I guess, goes awry, they're saying. Give me a fucking break. All right, y'all. I will. This is ridiculous. I will keep y'all posted on this trial. I'm going to start looking up and getting more reacquainted with the McMichael Bryan trial because we need to talk about that a little more. By the way, if you didn't know, the Powder trial, the cop who killed Dante Wright, that trial will be on TV as well, so we will be able to see that too. As usual, and of course, thank you for tuning into the Leon Block. Make sure you meditate on your path, celebrate your being, liberate your spirit, and educate yourself. I'm John Tell, and arm yourself with knowledge, y'all. As always, have a blessed journey.